In this tutorial, we're going to look at how Slippery Chicken creates output for both MIDI files, score files, and sound files. In general, no extra installation or software is required to produce MIDI files. These are actually created by using a subset of Common Music by Rick Tauber, and this comes bundled with Slippery Chicken, so there's nothing to install there. The MIDI files generated can be imported into other notation software such as Finale, Sibelius, MuseScore, etc. For printable output, we can use either Common Music notation or LilyPond within Slippery Chicken. CMN, of course, must be installed and loaded before we can use this, and how it's installed is described on the installation page in the manual. LilyPond, the application, can be obtained from lilypond.org. To create some MIDI files, we call the midi-play method, and the only required argument here is the Slippery Chicken object. This can be passed as a local or a global variable. The first argument to the make Slippery Chicken function is what returns the kind of object that would be passed to the midi-play method. And this is the same with all output methods. You could also specify the path and file name to the midi-play function. This defaults to sc.mid in the tmp folder, but can be set to be another file name in another folder by specifying the MIDI file parameter. A straightforward use of this method could look like the following on your screen. There are also 7 optional arguments. For example, start section, the voices that you want written to the MIDI file. Look at the specifics on the arguments in the documentation for that function. Some MIDI parameters set elsewhere include the program or patch numbers. These are specified in the definition of the instrument objects. So look at instruments.lsp there, or the manual page. We set the program number by using the MIDI program keyword for an instrument. We can also specify the MIDI channel numbers to be written for a particular instrument in the ensemble block of the make Slippery Chicken function. And we generally use a separate channel for chromatic and microtonal pitches so that we can have microtonal chords. To create CMN output, we use the cmn-display method, and the only required argument here is the Slippery Chicken object, just like with midi-play. But we can also specify the file to be written by setting the file keyword. This generates encapsulated PostScript files or .eps files. So the user must have software that's capable of opening such files, or software that's capable of converting these to PostScript or PDF files. For instance, Apple's Preview.app or the open source software GIMP. A straightforward use of this method, cmn-display, could look like the following. cmn-display has 31 optional arguments that influence the output. Some of these alter the data of this actual Slippery Chicken object before generating output, for instance, respelling of notes and adding automatic clefs. Other parameters or arguments influence the page layout, for instance, the size, the page height, automatic bar numbers, etc. Specifics on all these arguments can be found in the documentation. CMN's output can be very useful as a quick preview, as it's easy to generate the whole score within Lisp, and this is generally faster than generating the score with LilyPond. But CMN can sometimes produce collisions of symbols on the page, but these can be manually adjusted using external software such as Adobe Illustrator or Inkscape, or indeed any vector graphics editing software. The use of LilyPond is encouraged for generating printable output that requires less tweaking, though of course, as LilyPond also produces PDF files, this could be further tweaked inside Illustrator or Inkscape. To create LilyPond files, we call the write-lp-data-for-all method. This doesn't run LilyPond automatically as the cmn-display method does with CMN. Instead, it produces all the .ly files needed by LilyPond to create the score. So it creates separate files for the score and all of the individual players' parts, which is very useful. We also generate here file names automatically. The file names are based on the title slot. The file for the score is an underscore as a prefix with the -score.ly as a suffix. For the player's parts, we have the suffix -part.ly. We also create an additional def file, which is required by LP, LilyPond, but not directly by the user. The only required argument to write LP data for all is the Slippery Chicken object. The output path defaults to /tmp, but can be specified using the keyword argument base path. So a straightforward use of this method could look like the following. There are a further 28 optional arguments that influence layout and the data of the slippery chicken object prior to output, and the specifics on all of these arguments can be found in the documentation. LilyPond originally was designed as a command line tool, but now comes as a standalone executable for Macintosh and Windows systems. Command line usage is, however, still an option, and as of August 2012, the LilyPond app is not compatible with Macintosh OS X 10.7. However, we can still use LilyPond in line from the command line. Please look at the documentation for LilyPond on its website. And bear in mind that LilyPond can take a long time to render the output of larger scores. During this time it may be unresponsive and may appear to have hung, but it's probably doing a good job of producing your score for you. To create CLM output in the form of sound files, we call the clm-play method. A straightforward use may look like the following, but a detailed description of the clm-play method, and indeed of CLM, can be found in the 4 Slippery Chicken and CLM tutorials, as well as in the documentation online.